Guys, you hear me say all the time that males and men are different. Male by birth, men by choice. But what are those differences? One of those differences is this: men show up. Today, you're going to find out more of what that means in our interview with Kids Outdoor Zone founder TJ Greaney. You will walk away from today's episode with one practical way that you can make a massive difference, not only in the life of a young boy, but change your life in the process. Guys, I'm super excited to bring my guest on the show today, TJ Greaney. TJ Greaney lives in Texas with his beautiful wife of over 31 years, Sandra. TJ is the past president of the Outdoor Writers Association. He published a Texas lifestyle magazine for 25 years where he hosted the #1 outdoor radio show in Texas. On top of that, TJ is the founder of the Kids Outdoor Zone, aka KOZ. It is the fastest growing outdoor ministry for the men of the church. Their mission is to fatherless boys, fathers, and sons of the community. KOZ provides the men of your church with training curriculum to mentor boys using outdoor adventure. This ministry is exploding across the country. I'm so excited to get TJ on the show today. Hey, TJ, it's great to have you on the show, man. I've seen you over the years traveling around at different conferences, and we have a lot of similar DNA, and any man who's got a bow and a couple dead animals in the background is a friend of mine. How you doing, man?
I love that. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here, and this is a long time coming. You and I have been doing everything but hanging out.
Yep, that is true, man. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm looking at those pigs on the wall because that's a Texas thing. That's
Come
actually a
on.
California thing, and I'm looking at the AR-15 and a helicopter program.
Oh man, we have a ranch that you're welcome to come to and kill all the pigs you want. And there's a helicopter hog eradication team. You can pay to fly on the helicopter and kill the hogs right near. I mean, Matt, they'd probably land at the ranch and pick you up and take you away.
Oh,
And
that's so funny. I didn't realize you had a
yes,
ranch. Well, hey, let's jump into this thing because we have more things in common than I thought initially. On my 13th birthday, my parents sat me down and gave us "It's not your kids' fault we're getting a divorce" speech. And
oh
I thought,
man.
oh man, so why don't you do this, TJ? Why don't you go back to your childhood in Houston, Texas, and how early life was and the things that kind of hit you and kind of formed you into the man that you are today.
Well, boy, we don't have time to talk about everything that formed me into the uh, guy I am today. But so I too, at the age of 13, um, my parents made the decision to divorce. My father chose a bottle of rum over his family, and my mom took my three little brothers and sisters and moved 1,000 miles away from Houston to a small town in Illinois. And I had one night left in the rental house in the neighborhood we were living in. And then I moved out onto the streets and I spent the summer wandering the streets. Uh, Came full all the way around. I mean, there was places like I spent the night in the woods that I knew, and back in the day, there was Goodwill would have boxes in church parking lots, and I found one I could jimmy open, and I could sleep in this Goodwill box. And it was pretty cushy because there's always used clothes and stuff in there, and but come first day of high school, all my buddies were getting on the bus, so I got on the bus and rode to high school with them. And should have been a special day, right? Should have been a big day. And the bell rang, and they all went to lockers, and then they went to classes, and I stood in the hallway without any registration, without any paperwork, without any. I wasn't signed up, and I had no way to call and figure it out or have somebody call for me. And I went and I left there, and I went out onto the streets, and I spent a lot of years on the streets just making really poor choices, doing a lot of things that a lot of guys do or did in our age bracket, and kids today, it's even worse. But um, became very good at chemical agriculture sales and distribution. Um, that's a joke
Marijuana.
about I don't confess to anything
Ah,
out loud, but I told that joke at a small church in the middle of Illinois and cornfields all the way around. And all the guys looked at me and nobody laughed. And they said, all of us are in chemical and ag sales. We're in the farm belt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You tell it in the city, it's got a different meaning. But
Well,
anyway, I made a whole bunch of really poor choices and did a lot of things. But eventually I did sober up. And I remember there was one point where I was on the streets, living on the streets, and this guy I was hanging with, his parents found out I was on the street, so they invited me to to stay in a room in their house. They said, "Hey, you can come stay in this room. It's an empty room, and you can eat here, keep clean clothes clean." And it was a horrible decision on their part because I was a horrible influence on their son. But to me, it was a no-brainer. But the only caveat to the whole thing was they said, you have to go to church with us on Sunday. And I thought, I've done, I kind of grew up Catholic, so I knew it's an hour up, down, on your knees, all around, out the door, and it's over. It was a no-brainer for the benefits. And but I went, and it was a small church. It was called Almeda Bible Church, and I saw things in that church. Those people were different than anything I had ever experienced. They talked about Jesus. They were friendly. They were a family. They loved each other. They did meals together. And there was this one young guy there. Well, I say young. He's probably in his 30s, early 30s, maybe late 20s. His name was Terry Moyer. And he used to come over to me on Sundays and just talk to me and eventually mentored me. And I asked for Jesus in my heart and got baptized. And so it was a big deal, right? But it was just a couple of weeks after that I chose the darkness and I left. And I left the home and I left everything. So it was a really short period of time. But that short period of time, that influence, those words he said to me, and that memory of this church where people loved each other. So when I was getting married, my wife and I wanted to raise our kids in that, right? I remembered what that was and I longed for it. And I was, I knew that was a good place to raise your family. So anyway, that's kind of how went from on the streets to married and
wow.
moving along.
That's a cool story. When you were telling the story about you may or may not have been selling marijuana, I thought of the movie Stripes when he said, "Convicted? No. A felony? Convicted? No." Anyway, well, so what inspired you? When did you start KOZ, and what inspired you to launch this organization from scratch?
So great question. So when we got married, we decided we wanted to join a church, right? So we became members of a small little Bible church in Austin, Texas, started raising our kids. And man, I jumped in. It was everything, right? It was everything I wanted. I was the go-to guy. I mean, you need somebody to stay late and put up chairs, I'll do it. You need somebody to park cars, hey, I'll do it. Somebody there early, I'm in. You need somebody for men's breakfast? I'll do it. What do you need? I did anything, right? Because it was the place where my heart started to feel like I was a part of, man, I'm going to start crying talking about it. I felt like I had a family.
For sure. Yep. Yep.
And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And one day I was standing in the hallway during services, and the director of Sunday schools came running up to me and she said, TJ, the third to fifth grade boys Sunday school teacher didn't show up today. Can you fill in? And I said, I didn't realize at the time that directors for Sunday schools, they'll lure you in with this, hey, just one Sunday,
I'm
and you're
desperate.
there for 3 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I went over there and man, I didn't have any clue what to do, but I fell in love with these boys, right? And so I started filling in for them. And the problem that I had was I couldn't figure out the curriculum. I mean, they emailed you stuff, you showed up with a packet, they had all these meetings and all this stuff, and I'm like, I just can't figure it out. So I would take my little boys and I would grab the virtue and the scripture out of the curriculum for the Sunday, and we'd go outside in the courtyard under the trees or in the grass, and I'd make up hunting and fishing stories, and insert the scripture and the virtue. And it ended up growing to be the largest Sunday school class in the church. The director of Sunday schools was so frustrated with me. She'd go, like, I don't know what bear hunting has to do with your class, but you have captured the little boys. And they would have friends spend the night just to come to the Sunday school class with them. And it grew so fast that I was like, okay, I needed some buddies to help me. So I would find my buddies that are, sitting on the back row of the church. I'd say, dude, come help me. It's like super simple. Just come hang out. And so we kind of had this core group of guys and we were doing some stuff. It was fun. We loved it. And one Sunday we were standing there and we thought, hey, what if we invited these boys to go fishing at the pond down the street? And we just next Saturday just invite them. I mean, and we weren't looking like, oh, we're going to rescue these boys. We're going to baptize them on that it was just like we liked hanging out with them. We loved the time with them. And so we put the invitation out there to their parents when they picked them up. And the next Saturday, they all showed up. And the single moms were very intentional. We invited the little boys from our neighborhoods that were single mom little boys with and they didn't go to our church, but the little boys came and they showed up. And so, man, we had this beautiful day. And so we just said, why don't we just like do this once a month and just for fun? I mean, we're not doing ministry. Let's just do something fun with the boys. So we started doing these Saturday mornings once a month with the boys. We'd go hiking or maybe even shooting or something. And then we started realizing, man, maybe we could be a little more intentional. Maybe we talk about being good to your mom, you know, maybe we could talk about God. And we started being intentional and kind of knitting some things together that we knew God was saying to us, like be mindful of this time I'm giving you with these boys. And man, it just turned out to be this beautiful one Saturday a month deal. Uh, and that's how it started. Just it was an unintentional encounter with God and men and boys.
And what year was that, TJ?
It was about 15 years ago.
And so what's your reach? What's your reach now?
So we're in 36 states, Canada, and Eastern Europe. And
Holy
I
cow.
just heard today that they translated our training manual in Ukraine and Rome in Ukrainian for some churches in Ukraine.
Do you think that the explosive growth not only is a Holy Spirit thing, but do you think it's in response to some of these other organizations out there that have kind of gone rogue in recent years with the transgender and the homosexual issue? Is that something that you are assuming or thinking, or are you thinking it's just a desperate need for moms, single moms with sons to get help? We often forget, guys, that God has called us to steward the bodies He gave us so that we'll be ready, healthy, and spiritually dangerous to fight the good fight. That's why we're so excited to partner with Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. Join me on my journey by going to mountaintough.com and getting your free 6-week trial when you type in the code ARENA30. You won't be disappointed. Stay dangerous.
So I'm sure there's some of that in there. I'm sure we got some of those guys looking for a new way to do God's work. But so last summer, this is beautiful. I had a group of boys from around the country. We all met in New Mexico, just outside of Taos, New Mexico, in the mountains. A lot of boys have never walked uneven ground, right? They have no clue. So I just invited different leaders from around the country. Hey, I'm going to go rent this campground, bring some boys up. We had some boys up there. And one night we're sitting around the campfire and under the stars, right? This just one guy's playing his guitar and we're just like, man, just soaking this mountain air in July. Uh, and I get a text from Rick McGee. He's my right-hand guy. He's out of Lynchburg and he's in Moldova. training our first group in Eastern Europe. I mean, we just like God said go, he went because he's been over there, he's done that stuff before, and he sends me a picture, and it's a picture. Oh man, it's a picture of a group of men and a group of boys in Moldova. 3 days after he trained them, sitting around a campfire in a circle under the stars.
No way.
And what I realized was that men are men
Yep.
and boys are boys. Men long to have a purpose and a meaning, and boys long to sit under the ancient training of a man. And and I think men, man, and you and I both know men's ministry is the worst. I mean, get a guy off the couch, come on. I mean, it is your mantra, right?
Yep.
You know,
Yep. Yep.
I
Yep.
watch all your stuff. I know what you're saying. It's like, guys, just go
Get off the
and
couch.
come on. You're gonna choose that basketball game over. Oh, you just don't. And so anyway, I just was broken at that moment, and God just really revealed to us again after all these years, fresh revival is just men are men, and men are made for this, and they need a mission, they need something, and it just we're just it just tied us in that much more to just go out there and where are the men and offer it to them.
Well, that brings me to another point. So you keep saying men, men, men. Initially, when you look at your site and your name is Kids Outdoor Zone, it appears it's almost like it's a veneer. It almost looks like a kids ministry, but it is not a kids ministry. Can you explain that it is actually a men's ministry?
Yeah, I know. Look, I know it's kids outdoor zone and it's boys only, right? It's
Yeah.
monogender, male at birth only, period. That's the way it rolls. And but so KOZ is our little abbreviated the kids outdoor zone. It's abbreviated as KOZ, and I don't know what to tell you except what we saw in what we were doing was we can't tell you. I mean, I can't tell you how many men. I got an email today from a guy who's like, I can't tell you what this ministry has done for me. It's changed my life. It's changed my relationship with my wife, my kids, my family, my church. It has changed my life. You put a sword in my hand and a mission. You told me where to go to fight and how to do it. And so that's when we realized this is really a men's ministry because without the men, there is no rescue of the boys. You can have all the kids programs you want, but without somebody implementing the battle cry and the soldiers showing up, you got nothing.
Well, and it's
Without
oh,
cowboys,
totally.
you ain't got no rodeo.
Well, for sure, and it's really funny. You talk about your Sunday school class. You probably grew that class so fast. Not only were you outside, but you're probably the only man in the church doing Sunday school. And there's such
It
a
was
desperate.
it
Am I right?
that's You're right. And I in my little church now here, it's like my wife and I were talking about it the other day. She said, "Honey, please send some men." It's just, and I went in and I watched one Sunday school class, and they were doing, I love my church. This is the church where I walk in and I feel the family, right? And and she said, we need some guys. So I started telling my guys, I said, like, and some of the young guys, man, they went over there and they're showing up on Sunday morning and they're loving it. And I don't expect them to have an encounter like we might at, on a mountaintop with some men or something. It's part of the job that we need to do. I mean, we have to park the cars, we have to pass the plates. Some of us are going to be deacons and all that kind of stuff. But that ain't what I'm talking about when you step into the fight, like doing KOZ or doing something else where, man, you're one on one. Satan thinks he owns those street kids, and that's not true.
Yep, for sure. No, that's so powerful, man. Well, so this is a ministry to men. It's a ministry that happens outdoors. It's a ministry that happens with boys. So let's talk about what the ministry actually does. So I'm a guy, I listen to this podcast. The goal for me today is that we have guys all around the country, all around the world saying, "Hey, yes to KOZ. I want to start a KOZ club or branch in my area." So what happens? Walk us through the process. What happens at a church that has KOZ or a community that has KOZ?
Okay, so a guy encounters his heart, right?
Yes.
He watches one of your podcasts, he watches one of your Instagrams, he goes to a conference somewhere, and he encounters his heart. And then the question for him is, what now? What now? Is it just, do I have to read a book? What do I have to do? And I'm saying, no. Here's what you can do. You can go on the kidsoutdoorzone.com. Go to kidsoutdoorzone.com. Click on start a group. Watch a couple of the videos. They're right there. Super simple. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Right? Super simple. Watch a couple of videos. If it speaks to you, then click on start a group. You'll fill out a little bit of information, and then somebody's going to call you. And they're going to say, "What can I do to help you? Tell me your story." Well, let's get you lined up. Then they pay, I think it's $300 or $299 or $300 or something like that. Very minimal. And they get a whole box sent to them. It's got a KOZ flag, it's got 10 training manuals, it's got all the passwords to watch all the training material. They get this box. Then they rally a couple of their buddies together, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 guys, right? Then they plan a Friday night dinner with their wives. So in our training, the men who are going to volunteer sit down on a Friday night with their wives. They do a little dinner and they watch a video with me and Sandra, my wife. Men will not be successful in battle if their wives don't know what they're stepping into. They have absolutely have to have your wife understand the depth of the fight, because otherwise she's going to plan a trip to her mother's house and like, "Why aren't you coming, you horrible man?" Well, no, he's got KOZ and there's 10 boys showing up that don't have dads. We're going to go after lunch when he's finished on that Saturday. So the wife is included in that. We love on the wives. Our wives team loves on them really well. And then the next day, the guys get together, they eat some bacon, and they watch. They go through the training manual and they watch a series of videos that has movie clips and everything. And I walk them through why you do it, how you do it, where Jesus fits in this thing, and how to use the curriculum. So the next on Saturday, they do Friday night with their wives. Saturday they get together, they watch a series of videos, they go through the workbook, tells them where, how, why, everything they need to know. And then at the end of that, they get their certificates and their dog tags, and they pick out what Saturday a month, and it's one Saturday morning a month that they're going to meet with the boys. We tell them how to find the boys. We train them with all that. But typically second Saturday of every month from 8 to 1. And they go online, they download the curriculum for June, July, August, whatever month it is they start. And it walks them through what to do at 8 o'clock, what to do at 8:30, what to do at 9. And it's got suggested activities. And every month is a different topic. Could be archery, could be tools, could be shooting sports, fishing, camping, survival. Every month it's a different topic. And yeah, super, super simple, super simple. And they just commit to doing it, showing up on that Saturday. The biggest win for this is where we start seeing the real win for the men and the boys is that those men say they're going to do it and they do it.
Yeah, for sure. Show
They say,
up.
"I'm going to be there at 8 o'clock on the second Saturday of every month. And Bobby, if you show up, I'm going to be there."
Yeah, because
And it is
yeah,
like,
a lot of these kids showing up, their dads don't show up.
that's it.
So the worst
That's
thing you
it.
can do is show up or not show up.
That's exactly it. I tell the guys, if you do this a couple of months and you decide not to do it anymore, go to the group and tell the boys that you're not going to be there anymore. Show the boys how a man leaves
Yep. Yep.
as well, right? Like go in front of them. I had a guy, man, I had a guy who was like a leader for 3 years, and then he said, "I don't want to do it anymore." And I was like ready to get in a fist fight with him. Like, go tell him you're not going to be there anymore.
Yeah, for sure. How hard is it?
It's what a man does. It's teaching them, men show up when they say they're going to show up. Men talk about what they're doing and they share it with the people that it's important with. Anyway,
Well,
don't
it's
get
really
me
it's
going.
oh no, don't get me going. Well, it's just it's sickening how weak sauce guys are. And even today it's when we talk about showing up, I'm talking about if I text you, if I call you, if I email you, email me back. Don't ghost me.
Oh
Show up.
gosh.
In John 4 we see Jesus. He's going from Judea all the way up into Galilee. He crosses through Samaria. He stops at a well. He'd been walking 10, 20 miles. He sits down. The Bible says the disciples went into town to get water, or get food. Jesus, weary from the journey, sits down and asks a woman for water. So he's tired, he's hungry, and he's thirsty. The Bible says that in the first 8 verses. But the thing that Jesus did that a lot of these males out there don't do is he showed up. He showed up. You don't have to be good. You just have to be there.
There you are. That is so key. That is such a word for what we're talking about. So in KOZ, I got guys in their 70s that are leading KOZ groups. They're not doing the heavy lifting, but they're showing up. Robert Lewis told me one time the reason why the Better Man program works so well, and it was brilliant. It was like, boom, my brain opened. He said, the trick is to get a senior level, to get a king or a sage, to get a sage to invite some kings and some young guys to sit at my table with me, because those young guys want to sit under the authority of that seasoned sage, right? And and when you have, and so I see these KOZ groups that are just killing it. And you see the 70, 60, 70-year-old guy, then some 30, 40s, and maybe a 20-year-old couple of those guys. And the boys, oh man, I'm going to cry. The boys from the community come in and they're sitting under the authority and the training and the beauty of those men, which is how it was designed.
For sure. Well, and the funny
Oh
part
my
is there used to be
gosh.
this thought was, oh, I'm 60 years old. I can't, I'm too old or I'm 70. I'm going to tell you something. 70 is the new 40. It really is. And this younger generation is growing up without parents, which means they're growing up without grandparents, and they are hungry for any man who is willing to show up. I'm 100% convinced of it.
I love that. I love that. You're absolutely, absolutely right. And the boys just absolutely long for it. I mean, they long for it. And you don't have to be a biblical scholar. Look, I am far from a biblical scholar, but my heart, like every man's heart, is
Yep.
designed to train up the next generation of young men. And it might just be showing up. You may be the guy who makes lunches at KOZ, but you know what happens while you're over there after a few months? One of those little boys who really doesn't feel like he's going to come over and he's going to hang out. Can I help?
Yep. Yep.
And all he's going to want to do is come see Mr. Bob, who is in charge of the lunch and the food, and he's going to want to. And I'm telling you, I've seen it over and over and over again. Life change, boom, for the
Yeah.
man and the boy.
Well, it's funny. I was a youth pastor for 25 years, and every event you always have those one or two kids that always want to help, and you realize that they don't want. I mean, they want to help, but they want to sit around and hang out with you. They want to have the relationship. And the funny part, I'm wondering if you see this. When you're dealing with a ministry to boys in this broken world, word spreads fast in your community. It doesn't take long for it to move way beyond the church doors. Am I right?
It, and we have to be careful. I mean,
Oh,
I get leaders that want to go to the school district and say, "Hey, we're doing this thing," and I got to say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" You know, you can do so many boys kind of look at. We don't do one on one. I mean, you can give me 10 boys and we go marching in the woods. We'll be
for
fine.
sure, for sure.
But we try and get as many. But you got to be careful. The world, when single moms find out there's some men out there, man, they're bringing their boy. They're like, oh my gosh, please, yes. Big brothers and big sisters. I read some stats the other day, 30% drop in men volunteering that they're assigning women to mentor boys. That used to be
Can't do
where
it.
you went.
Can't do it.
But you know what it is? What it is? A big part of it is guys won't do the training. They won't do all that
Oh.
it takes to be a big brother and big sister.
Well, it's really interesting. You keep talking about men and boys, and I'll tell you what. There's a group in between that I call them males, and males really are the problem, but men are the solution. So the males don't show up. The males are anonymous in the stands of the church. You're looking for men to step into this role, and I'm surprised. Quite frankly, I thought it was a weekly thing, monthly. You're talking 12 times a year. That is not a massive commitment for a man. 12 times a year, you've already got the curriculum. You said to me earlier offline that you have how many years worth of curriculum for these men?
We have 10 years worth of curriculum. You can
10
take a boy
years.
from 8 to 18, and every month a different topic, different scripture, different conversation with the boys.
So this KOZ, the guys graduate out of the program at 18.
Yeah, hopefully by 18, they're going into what we call LITs, leader in training,
For sure, for sure.
and they're coming back to be helpers. And then eventually we're getting young guys, 18, 20, that are coming back doing the adult training, the harvest team leader, HTL training. And man, it just changed their life. They're not giving up. They're not leaving. They won't leave.
So okay, so I'm a dude listening to this podcast. I live in a city of 500,000 or more. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool, this outdoor thing, but I'm in the city. What do you say to that guy?
I say, yeah. Well, I started in Austin, Texas. So it started in the city. There's a park, there's a green space, take a trip, whatever. If you want it, you'll figure it out. You're a guy. You'll go find a drainage ditch. You'll find a lone tree in the middle of a park. You'll figure it out. There's an archery range somewhere. There's a shooting range somewhere. There's, I mean, we just posted a video on YouTube, and it's out of Indiana, and it's all African American guys, and they're just pouring into these boys. And they're doing all outdoor stuff, dude. And you're just like, wait, no, that can't be what? No, dude, they are feeding the heart and spirit of every guy, every guy. And they have this whole thing like if it doesn't have a basketball, it won't work in the inner city. Well, there's some of that, the guy teaching the boy, the one-on-one. I get it. That's beautiful, man. Go do that. But boy, I bet you there's very few boys that if you say, hey, let's go fishing, that don't go, yes, please. How? What is that? How? Well, come on.
There's
We'll
such a
go.
need. And I go back to something I read years ago that God created men in the wilderness, and then he brought them into the garden where he created Eve. And men have been trying to escape to the wilderness ever since. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you've been born. We all have a desire to get out in the wide open spaces. It's just the way God made men. You talked about being under the stars. I remember hunting mule deer. We backpacked into a place in northern New Mexico, and we're backpacked in. We're at 7,800 feet elevation, staring at the New Mexico stars, and it's surreal. And it's just what God has made us for. To get out there and to explore an adventure. And I think what you're doing is so good, because I think that whenever a child walks in the room, we are on holy ground. Everything should stop. We should put attention on that child, because that child has a lifetime ahead of him or her to become the man or woman of God that they've been called to be. And we need to stop and
That's
recognize
good.
we're on holy ground. And so with what you're doing, you have a ministry that is built on holy ground, whether that's in New Mexico or Chicago City. That's what you're doing. So I really appreciate what you're doing, man. I really love
Hey,
what's
can
going
I
on.
can I
Yeah.
share two more quick things?
Yeah, you sure can.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So here's the challenge to the men out there and the pastors and ministry leaders. In John chapter 21, Jesus is gone. He's come back twice and met the guys in the upper room. and now he's gone again after his 2 visits, and the guys go stir crazy, right? And Peter just says, I gotta go where my brain is clear, right? So a bunch of them load up, they go down to his fish camp, they get in some boats, fish all night. They come, they don't catch anything. They're poking at each other, they're irritated, aggravated. That's got to be happening. It's a bunch of guys, right? They're rowing back in, and I know you know this story. And they're rowing back in, and some guy on shore says, "Hey, did you catch anything?" Well, the one thing that the guys who fish all night don't want to hear, it's what your friend would say to you to just poke you, right? And so then he's, says, "Drop your nets." Peter knows it. He jumps in the water, swims to shore. Those guys pull the nets up with all the fish. And Jesus is standing there. He says, "Bring some of that fish over here and put it on this fire." He's already got a fire. He's already got fish cooking. And it's sunrise on the lake with his closest friends. And they're all sitting there and they're looking at him in awe, obviously. I mean, it's like, he's here. He's here. And then he does that beautiful thing with Peter where he just loves on Peter. And all the guys are watching. He didn't just say, "Peter, come over here. I want to talk to you." All the guys are watching. And he does this beautiful thing with Peter. And my heart was turned to that. And I thought, well, but why did he choose the last time he was with his men to be at a campfire on the side of a lake? And the reason why is because he just spent 3.5 years with his closest men, walking town to town every night under the stars. He sat with them and joked and trained his closest men, the most important men under the stars. At sunrise every morning, they ate breakfast, and he trained them and prepared them for the day. And so the question to the pastors, to the ministries out there is, why don't we use that model he gave us? Why don't we sit around more campfires and train up the men? So that is my pitch for an outdoor ministry.
Well, I'll tell you
Right?
what, I love what you're doing, and it's impacting kids, and not only that, the Holy Spirit is in it, and it's expanding geometrically. So here's the big question, man. I'm a guy. I want to learn more about your organization. How do I do it? Where do I go?
Just go to kidsoutdoorzone.com and click on start a group, and you'll get a prompt. You can fill it out. You can email from there, get more information. Just go to the website. It's got videos. It's got everything you need on
I know. I
there.
just watched your ugly mug today on one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, so, and let me say one thing.
Yeah.
So when you step into ministry, when a man steps into ministry with his heart, God will reveal and bless you and do things with your heart that you don't understand till you do it. And so I was at a Baptist conference last year, and a guy walked by and said, "Hey man, do you speak at Wild Game dinners?" I said, "Well, yeah, call my office, see if I can be there. If I can, I'd love to come do it." Right. And so I get booked for this Wild Game dinner, and in November this year, I jump in the car with my wife and my kids, and we drive down to Nassau Bay, Texas. It's a little town right outside of Houston. And we park in the parking lot of this little Baptist church, Nassau Bay Baptist Church. And brother, that is the church that had the Goodwill box in the corner
Oh my gosh.
when I slept in that Goodwill box at 13. And God said, "I'm going to bring you back and heal a part of your heart." And I stood on the stage at the church when I was 13, a lost little boy. And he let me speak to the men of that community and challenge them. Do not let the boys in this community go unnoticed. He rescues our hearts, but we have to give him our hearts. And no better way than to, and for the guys that are listening to this, watching this podcast, good job, man. Good job. You're in the 1%. And man, you call, we'll come, because you're in the 1%.
You will show up, and you've been showing up for 15
Come on.
years. So appreciate you, brother. So
All
great to
right.
have you on the show. We're going to connect offline, man, but I appreciate you. God bless your
All right.
ministry.
God bless. Mount up.
Men, before we close, I want to say that Men in the Arena is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If this ministry is helping you become your best version of Christ, please consider supporting our ministry, becoming one of our financial champions. You can do so at meninthearena.org. Until next time, feel the wet sand on the arena floor, hear the deafening roar of the crowd, taste the sweetness of victory, smell the stench of battle, get in the game, get dirty, grind it out, and be a man.